Zara lived on a world far from Earth, where the sky was always purple and 3 moons hung like glowing pearls in the darkness. Her people were called the Valix, and they were nothing like humans. They had skin that could glow with different colors depending on their mood, and they were naturally brave and confident in everything they did. But Zara was different. While other young Valix her age would walk tall and speak their minds without fear, Zara would stumble over her words and her skin would flicker nervously whenever she had to talk to someone. This made her stand out in the worst possible way. Every morning, Zara would wake up in her small living pod and immediately feel that familiar twist in her stomach, the feeling that something bad might happen today, the feeling that she might say the wrong thing or embarrass herself in front of others. Her skin would start glowing a pale, worried blue before she even got out of bed. Her job was special, though. She often wondered if she deserved it. Zara worked as a researcher, studying other worlds and the creatures that lived on them. She would sit in a dark room filled with screens and computers, watching signals that came from distant planets. Her favorite planet to study was Earth, the small blue world with only 1 moon. The humans fascinated her. Unlike her own people, humans seemed to feel things deeply and struggle with their emotions just like she did. She would watch their movies and listen to their music, amazed at how they could express fear, joy, sadness, and love all at the same time. Sometimes she felt like she understood humans better than her own species. While other Valix would make quick decisions and never look back, Zara would spend hours thinking about every choice. She would replay conversations in her head, wondering if she had said the right thing. Her colleagues thought she was slow or indecisive, but really, she just cared too much about getting things right. One day, everything changed. The Council of Elders called all the young researchers to an important meeting. Zara's hands shook as she walked into the great hall, her skin flickering between nervous blue and worried green. The hall was enormous, with crystal walls that amplified every sound. Hundreds of young Valix filled the space, all confident and eager. Elder Kieran stood at the front, his ancient skin glowing with the deep gold of wisdom and authority. His voice boomed across the hall as he began to speak about their dying world. Their sun was getting weaker and their planet was slowly becoming too cold to support life. They needed to find a new home, and they needed to do it soon. But this wasn't just about moving to a new planet. The Valix had learned from studying other species that genetic diversity was crucial for survival. They couldn't just relocate. They needed to form partnerships with other intelligent species to ensure their people would thrive for generations to come. The Elder announced the Genetic Preservation Protocol. Young Valix would be sent to various worlds to study other species and identify potential partners for their civilization's future. It was an honor to be chosen, he said. It was also terrifying. Zara felt her skin go completely pale, almost transparent with fear. The thought of approaching strangers from another world, trying to convince them of anything, made her want to hide under her desk and never come out. How could someone like her, who could barely order food without stammering, possibly handle such an important mission? But then Elder Kieran said something that surprised everyone. He explained that they weren't looking for the loudest or most aggressive representatives. They needed individuals who could observe carefully, understand different cultures, and build trust slowly. They needed people who cared deeply about others and could see the value in different ways of thinking. As he spoke, Zara realized he was describing exactly the qualities that made her feel so different and awkward among her own people. Her careful observation, her deep concern for others' feelings, her tendency to think before speaking, maybe these weren't weaknesses after all. After the meeting, Zara walked home through the crystal forests of her world, her mind spinning with possibilities and fears. The trees around her glowed softly in response to her emotional state, creating a light show of blues and purples that matched her inner turmoil. She thought about all the hours she had spent studying humans, learning their languages, understanding their customs and emotions. She knew more about Earth than almost any other Valix. She understood their complex social structures, their art, their dreams, and their fears. But knowing about them and actually talking to them were 2 completely different things. That night, Zara stood on her balcony looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, spinning around its single sun with its billions of human inhabitants. The idea of meeting them in person made her skin flicker rapidly between excitement and terror. She imagined trying to explain to a human that she was from another world. She imagined trying to discuss the possibility of their species working together. The very thought made her want to crawl into bed and hide under her blankets. But something else was growing inside her alongside the fear. For the first time in her life, Zara felt like her different perspective might actually be valuable. Her anxiety, which had always felt like a burden, might be exactly what this mission needed. Her careful nature, her deep empathy, her ability to see things from other points of view, these could be gifts rather than curses. As the 3 moons rose higher in the purple sky, Zara made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow she would volunteer for the Earth mission. She would face her fears and step into the unknown, trusting that her gentle heart and anxious mind might be exactly what both species needed to find their way to a better future together. The next morning came too quickly for Zara. She had barely slept, tossing and turning as her mind raced with thoughts of volunteering for the Earth mission. Her skin had been glowing all night, shifting between nervous blue and determined purple, creating a light show that her neighbors probably found annoying. She walked to the council building on shaky legs, her heart beating so fast it felt like it might burst out of her chest. The building was massive, made of the same crystal material as everything else on their world, but it felt more intimidating than beautiful today. Other young Valaks were already gathering in the courtyard, talking excitedly about which missions they hoped to get. Zara found a quiet corner and watched them. They all seemed so sure of themselves, so ready to take on the universe. She wondered if she was making a huge mistake. Maybe she should just go home and pretend she never heard about the genetic preservation protocol. Maybe she should stick to her safe job watching screens and never have to talk to anyone face to face. But then she remembered the humans she had studied for so long. She thought about their movies where ordinary people did extraordinary things, not because they weren't scared, but because they chose to be brave despite their fear. Maybe that's what courage really was. Not the absence of fear, but moving forward anyway. When the time came to volunteer, Zara's voice came out as barely a whisper. "I'd like to request the Earth assignment," she said to the registration officer. Her skin was practically transparent with nervousness, and she had to repeat herself 3 times before the officer could hear her. The officer looked surprised. Most Valaks who volunteered for Earth were the bold, outgoing types who thought they could easily charm the humans. But something in Zara's file made him pause. Her research scores were exceptional, and her cultural understanding reports were the most detailed and insightful he had ever seen. A few days later, Zara received the message she had been both hoping for and dreading. She had been selected for the Earth mission. Along with the acceptance letter came instructions to report to Dr. Kef, the mission's lead scientist and one of the most respected researchers on their world. Dr. Kef's laboratory was unlike anything Zara had ever seen. The walls were covered with images from hundreds of different worlds, showing creatures of every shape and color imaginable. The air hummed with the sound of computers processing data from across the galaxy. In the center of it all sat Dr. Kef, an elderly Valaks whose skin had the deep, steady glow of someone who had seen many worlds and learned from all of them. "So you're the one who wants to go to Earth," he said, looking up from his work. His voice was kind but serious. "Tell me, young Zara, why do you think you're the right person for this mission?" Zara's skin immediately started flickering with anxiety. She had prepared for this question, but now that she was here, all her planned answers seemed to disappear. I'm probably not the right person," she admitted. "I get nervous talking to people. I overthink everything. I'm not brave like the others." Dr. Kef leaned back in his chair and studied her carefully. "You know," he said slowly, "I've been doing this work for over 200 years. I've sent confident young Valaks to dozens of worlds. And do you know what I've learned? The ones who think they know everything often learn nothing. The ones who are afraid of making mistakes are usually the ones who take the time to do things right." He stood up and walked over to a wall covered with failed mission reports. "See all these? These are from agents who were so sure of themselves that they never bothered to really understand the cultures they were studying. They walked into situations thinking they could take charge, and they ended up causing more problems than they solved. Zara looked at the reports, feeling a mix of relief and terror. But what if I'm too scared to even try? Dr. Kef smiled, his skin glowing with warm amber light. Fear isn't the enemy, Zara. Ignorance is. And you're the furthest thing from ignorant when it comes to humans. Your research reports show a level of understanding that most of our agents never achieve, even after years of direct contact. He pulled up her files on a large screen. Page after page of detailed observations about human behavior, social structures, emotional patterns, and cultural variations. You see things others miss because you care about getting it right. You notice the small details that make all the difference. That's not weakness, that's exactly what this mission needs. Over the following weeks, Zara began the most intense training of her life. She learned how to modify her appearance to look human, though the process was uncomfortable and strange. She practiced human languages until she could speak them without her natural accent. She studied human customs, foods, social interactions, and even learned to walk and move like a human. The hardest part wasn't the physical changes, though. It was the psychological preparation. Dr. Kef made her practice conversations with holographic humans, starting with simple interactions like ordering food or asking for directions. Every time she stumbled or her confidence wavered, he would remind her that humans made mistakes too. In fact, he explained, humans often found perfection suspicious and were more comfortable with people who seemed genuine and relatable. Your nervousness might actually be an advantage, he told her one day after a particularly difficult training session. Humans respond well to people who seem vulnerable and real. They don't trust people who seem too confident or too perfect. Zara found this hard to believe, but as she continued studying human interactions, she began to see what he meant. In human movies and books, the characters people loved most were often the ones who struggled with doubt and fear. They were the ones who had to work hard to be brave, not the ones who were naturally fearless. As her training progressed, something unexpected started happening. Zara began to feel a little more confident, not because she was becoming less anxious, but because she was learning to see her anxiety as a tool rather than a hindrance. Her careful nature meant she prepared thoroughly for every scenario. Her empathy meant she could understand how others might feel in difficult situations. Her tendency to overthink meant she considered consequences that others might miss. The day before her departure, Dr. Kef called her to his office one last time. I want you to remember something, he said. You're not going to Earth to convince humans to like us. You're going to build a bridge between our species. Bridges require understanding on both sides, and that's something you're uniquely qualified to create. Zara nodded, her skin glowing with a mixture of fear and determination. For the first time in her life, she felt like her differences might actually be valuable. She was still scared, terrified even, but she was also ready to try something that could change the future for both humans and Valix. As she boarded the ship that would take her to Earth, Zara carried with her not just the hopes of her people, but a new understanding of herself. She was beginning to realize that being different wasn't something to hide from. It was something that could make all the difference. The spaceship journey to Earth took 3 months, and every day felt like a year to Zara. She spent most of her time in her small cabin, practicing human expressions in the mirror and trying to get used to her new appearance. Looking at herself was strange. Her skin no longer glowed with colors. Her eyes were smaller and rounder, and her hair felt weird and heavy on her head. The ship's computer had thousands of hours of human recordings for her to study. She watched everything from news broadcasts to cooking shows, trying to understand not just what humans said, but how they said it. She noticed that humans used their hands a lot when they talked, and their faces showed emotions in ways that seemed both similar to and completely different from her own people. When Earth finally appeared outside her window, Zara felt her stomach do something that definitely wasn't normal for either humans or Valix. The planet looked so small and blue, with swirling white clouds that looked like someone had painted them on. It was beautiful, but also terrifying. Somewhere down there were billions of humans who had no idea that someone from another world was about to walk among them. The landing was the easy part. Her ship was designed to be invisible to human technology, and it set her down quietly in a forest outside a large city. The hard part was everything that came after. Zara had all the paperwork she needed to become a human student, created by advanced technology that could fool any human computer system. According to her new identity documents, she was an exchange student from a small European country that most people had never heard of. Her first day at the university was a disaster. Everything was overwhelming. The sounds, the smells, the way humans moved in large groups without bumping into each other. Zara had studied human behavior for years, but actually being surrounded by real humans was completely different from watching them on screens. She got lost trying to find her first class and ended up wandering around the same building for an hour before finally asking someone for help. When she tried to speak, her voice came out too quiet and she had to repeat herself 3 times before the other student could understand her. Her carefully practiced human mannerisms felt clunky and obvious, like she was performing in a play, where everyone else knew the lines except her. But something interesting happened during her second week. Zara was sitting alone in the cafeteria, picking at food that tasted nothing like what she was used to, when another student sat down across from her. He had kind eyes and messy brown hair, and he was carrying a book about stars and galaxies. "You look like you're having about as much fun with lunch as I am," he said with a smile. "I'm Alex. I don't think we've met." Zara's carefully prepared introduction completely left her brain. "I'm Zara," she managed to say, then immediately worried that her name sounded too foreign or strange. But Alex didn't seem to notice anything odd. "Cool name. Are you in the astronomy program? I saw you in Professor Chen's lecture yesterday, and you looked like you actually understood what she was talking about, which is more than I can say for myself." This was exactly the kind of conversation Zara had practiced hundreds of times, but sitting here with a real human asking real questions made her mind go blank. She dropped her fork, knocked over her water cup, and when she tried to clean up the mess, she knocked over Alex's drink too. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," she said, her face turning red in a very human way that she hadn't expected. "I'm not usually this clumsy. Well, actually, I am usually this clumsy, but not usually this clumsy around new people. I mean, I am clumsy around new people too, but..." She stopped talking because she realized she was making it worse. Alex just laughed, but not in a mean way. "Hey, no worries. I once spilled coffee on my professor during office hours. At least you're spilling on me and not someone who controls your grades." He helped her clean up the mess with napkins. "So where are you from? Your accent is interesting." Zara launched into her prepared backstory about being from a small town in Eastern Europe. But halfway through she realized she was talking too fast, and probably not making much sense. Alex listened patiently, though, and asked thoughtful questions that showed he was actually interested in what she was saying. Over the following weeks, Zara found herself looking forward to running into Alex around campus. He was studying astrophysics and spent a lot of time thinking about whether life existed on other planets. Sometimes Zara had to bite her tongue to keep from telling him exactly how right he was about that. "I've always felt like there has to be someone else out there," Alex told her one evening as they sat outside the library looking up at the stars. "I mean, the universe is so huge, it seems impossible that we're the only ones trying to figure it all out." Zara felt a strange ache in her chest when he said that. Here was a human who was already thinking about the possibility of meeting people from other worlds, and she couldn't tell him that one was sitting right next to him. The weight of her secret felt heavier every day. But there were other things that surprised her too. Her nervousness, which she had expected to be a huge problem, actually seemed to make other humans more comfortable around her. When she stumbled over words or dropped things, people would smile and share their own embarrassing stories. When she asked questions about things that seemed obvious to everyone else, people were happy to explain without making her feel stupid. Her roommate Lisa became particularly protective of her. "You're like the sweetest person ever," Lisa told her one day. "I love how you actually listen when people talk instead of just waiting for your turn to speak like most people do." Zara realized that her Valix training in careful observation was being interpreted as genuine interest and kindness by humans. Her tendency to think before speaking made her seem thoughtful, rather than slow. Her anxiety-driven need to prepare for conversations meant she always had interesting questions to ask and seemed genuinely curious about other people's lives. As the months passed, Zara found herself forming real friendships with her human classmates. She joined study groups, went to movies, and even attended a few parties, though large crowds still made her nervous. She was supposed to be collecting genetic samples and assessing compatibility, but she kept putting off that part of her mission because it felt too much like betraying the trust these humans had given her. The worst part was how genuine everything felt. She had expected to pretend to like humans for the sake of her mission, but she actually did like them. She loved their creativity, their passion for learning, their ability to find humor in difficult situations. She loved how they took care of each other, how they could be sad and happy at the same time, how they made art and music just because it made them feel something. One night, while Alex was explaining his theories about how alien civilizations might try to communicate with Earth, Zara felt something break inside her chest. She realized that she wasn't just studying humans anymore. She cared about them. She cared about Alex and Lisa and Professor Chen, and even the grumpy librarian who always shushed everyone. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to remain objective, to evaluate humans as potential partners for her species' survival. But somewhere along the way, her mission had become personal. These weren't just subjects to study anymore. They were friends. And that made everything infinitely more complicated. 6 months had passed since Zara arrived on Earth, and she felt more confused than ever. Every day she spent with humans made her mission feel more impossible. She was supposed to be collecting genetic samples and preparing reports for the Valix Council, but instead she found herself caring more about her human friends' daily problems than her own species' survival. The breaking point came on a Tuesday that started like any other day. Zara was in Professor Chen's advanced astronomy class, listening to a lecture about solar activity and its effects on planetary climates. The professor was discussing how small changes in a star's energy output could have massive consequences for the worlds orbiting around it. Suddenly, Zara's advanced Valix knowledge kicked in, and she realized something terrible. The data Professor Chen was showing, the patterns she was describing, they were exactly the same warning signs that Valix scientists had detected on their own world decades ago. Earth's sun was beginning the same process that was killing her home planet. Zara's human disguise flickered for just a second as her shock caused her natural bioluminescence to pulse beneath her artificial skin. Fortunately, everyone was focused on the professor's presentation, and no one noticed the brief glow. After class, Zara ran back to her dorm room, her mind racing. She pulled out the hidden communication device that let her contact her home world and sent an urgent message to Dr. Kef. The response came back within hours, and it confirmed her worst fears. "You are correct," Dr. Kef's message read. "Our deep space sensors have detected the same patterns around Earth's sun. The humans have approximately 50 years before their planet becomes uninhabitable. They don't know because their technology isn't advanced enough to detect the early warning signs." Zara stared at the message until the words blurred together. 50 years. That seemed like a long time to humans, but it was nothing when it came to preparing an entire civilization for such a massive change. Her own people had known about their sun's decline for over a century, and they were still struggling to find solutions. But there was more to Dr. Kef's message. "This changes everything about your mission," he continued. "We're not just looking for a new home anymore. Both our species need each other. We have the technology to help stabilize their sun or relocate their population. They have the genetic diversity and the planet we need. This could be the partnership that saves both civilizations." The weight of this knowledge felt like it might crush Zara completely. She was just one nervous girl from another world, and now the survival of 2 entire species might depend on decisions she would have to make. The responsibility was overwhelming, and her anxiety reached levels she had never experienced before. For days, Zara could barely function. She would sit in classes and stare at her human classmates, knowing that their grandchildren might never get to live on the beautiful planet they called home. She watched Alex getting excited about his research into distant galaxies, not knowing that the biggest discovery in human history was sitting right next to him, too scared to say anything. Her behavior started becoming strange enough that her friends noticed. Lisa asked if she was feeling sick. Alex wondered if she was homesick and wanted to talk about whatever was bothering her. Professor Chen pulled her aside after class to ask if everything was okay with her studies. Their kindness and concern made everything worse. These people cared about her, and she was lying to them about the most important thing that would ever happen in their lives. Every time someone showed her friendship or trust, she felt like she was betraying them. The crisis reached its peak on a clear Friday night. Alex had invited Zara to join him for stargazing on the roof of the science building. It was something they had done many times before, but tonight felt different. Alex seemed more nervous than usual, and he kept starting to say something and then stopping himself. "Zara," he finally said as they sat on the roof looking up at the constellation of Orion, "I need to tell you something, and I hope it doesn't make things weird between us." Zara's heart started beating faster. She had been dreading this moment for weeks. Alex was going to tell her that he had feelings for her, and she would have to figure out how to respond without revealing that she wasn't even human. "I really care about you," Alex continued, his voice shaky with nervousness. "I know we haven't known each other that long, and I know you're dealing with being far from home and everything, but you've become really important to me. I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hit Zara like a physical blow. This kind, brilliant, wonderful human was telling her he loved her, and she couldn't even tell him what species she belonged to. The weight of all her secrets, combined with the knowledge of what was going to happen to his world, became too much to bear. Her emotional control, which she had been holding together with pure willpower for months, finally snapped. Her anxiety transformed into something much bigger and more powerful, without thinking, without planning, without any of the careful consideration that usually paralyzed her. Zara made a decision that would change everything. "Alex," she said, her voice stronger and clearer than it had ever been since arriving on Earth. "I need to tell you something too, and it's going to sound impossible, but I need you to trust me." Alex looked at her with concern and curiosity. "Of course, you can tell me anything." Zara took a deep breath and felt something shift inside her. Her anxiety wasn't disappearing, but it was transforming into something else. Determination, clarity, purpose. For the first time since arriving on Earth, she knew exactly what she had to do. "I'm not from Eastern Europe," she began. "I'm not from anywhere on Earth at all." As she spoke those words, she let her human disguise drop slightly. Her skin began to glow softly with the pale purple light of deep emotion, and her eyes shifted to their natural silver color. Alex stared in shock, but he didn't run away or scream. He just sat there watching her transformation with the same fascination he showed when looking at the stars. "I'm from another world," Zara continued, her confidence growing with each word. "And I came here on a mission to study your species, but something happened that wasn't supposed to happen. I started caring about you, about all of you. And now I know something that could change everything for both our peoples." Alex reached out slowly and touched her glowing hand. His finger traced the patterns of light beneath her skin, and his expression was one of wonder rather than fear. "You're really from another planet," he whispered. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Zara said. "And Alex, we need to talk." Alex stared at Zara for what felt like hours but was probably only a few seconds. His hand was still touching hers, feeling the warmth of the soft purple light that pulsed beneath her skin. She waited for him to pull away, to run, to call her crazy or dangerous, but instead he did something completely unexpected. He smiled. "You know," Alex said slowly, "this actually explains a lot. Like why you always seem to know things about space that aren't in any of our textbooks, and why you ask such interesting questions about human behavior, like you're studying us from the outside." Zara felt relief wash over her like cool water. "You're not afraid?" Terrified, Alex admitted with a laugh. "But also, this is the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me. I've spent my whole life wondering if we were alone in the universe, and it turns out I've been having lunch with someone from another planet for months." Over the next hour, Zara told Alex everything. About her world and her people, about the dying sun and the mission to find genetic partners, about her anxiety and how different she was from other Valeks. She explained the environmental crisis facing both their worlds and the technology that might be able to help. Alex listened to it all without interrupting, asking thoughtful questions and making connections that showed just how brilliant he really was. When she finished talking, he was quiet for a long time, processing everything she had told him. "So, let me make sure I understand this," he finally said. "Your people need a new home because your son is dying. Our son is starting to die too, but we don't know it yet. You have technology that might be able to fix the problem, but you need genetic diversity to save your species. And somehow I got chosen by the most caring and thoughtful alien in the galaxy." "You weren't chosen randomly," Zara said softly. "I was supposed to evaluate many humans and select the best genetic matches. But Alex, I chose you because you're kind, because you listen, because you make me feel like being nervous and careful isn't something wrong with me." She took a deep breath and said the words that had been building inside her for months. "I chose you not just for science or survival. I chose you because I love you too, and because my anxiety taught me to really see who you are, not just what you could give my species." Alex was quiet again, and Zara worried that she had said too much too fast. But then he turned to face her completely, taking both of her glowing hands in his. "Okay," he said simply. "What do we do now?" The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Alex helped Zara figure out how to approach the human governments and scientific community with her information. They decided to start small, with Professor Chen and a few trusted researchers who would be most likely to understand the implications. Zara's anxiety tried to kick in during these meetings, but every time she felt overwhelmed, she remembered what Dr. Kef had taught her. Her nervousness wasn't a weakness. It was what made her careful, thorough, and sensitive to how others were feeling. When she explained the situation to humans, she did it gently, with consideration for how shocking the news would be. Professor Chen was the first human outside of Alex to learn the truth. She took it better than expected, especially when Zara showed her data that confirmed her worst fears about solar activity. Within days, they had assembled a small team of scientists and officials who could help plan the next steps. The hardest part was communicating with the Valeks Council. Zara had to explain that the situation had changed dramatically, and that her mission had evolved from simple genetic collection to something much more complex. She had to convince them that humans weren't just potential partners. They were equals who deserved to know the truth about their situation. Dr. Kef supported her completely. "You've done exactly what we hoped you would do," he told her during one of their video calls. "You've built a bridge based on understanding and trust. That's worth more than any genetic samples you could have collected." The negotiations between the two species were delicate and complicated, but Zara found herself perfectly suited for the role of translator and mediator. Her anxiety had taught her to consider every possible outcome, to think about how her words might affect others, and to approach conflicts with patience and empathy. When human leaders worried about Valek's technology being too advanced, Zara helped them understand that her people valued cooperation over domination. When Valek's officials questioned whether humans could be trusted with sensitive information, she shared stories of the kindness and integrity she had witnessed every day on Earth. 6 months after her revelation to Alex, Zara stood in front of the United Nations General Assembly, her skin glowing softly with calm blue light as she addressed representatives from every country on Earth. She was no longer pretending to be human, but she wasn't trying to hide her Valek's nature either. She was simply being herself, nervous, careful, deeply caring, and absolutely determined to save both worlds. "My anxiety used to make me think I was weak," she told the assembly. "But it taught me something valuable. It taught me to notice things others miss, to care deeply about consequences, and to understand that real strength comes from vulnerability and truth." She explained the environmental challenges facing both species and presented the Valek's proposal for a joint effort to stabilize both solar systems. She talked about the benefits of genetic and cultural exchange, and the possibilities that could emerge when two civilizations worked together instead of facing their problems alone. The vote was closer than anyone had hoped, but it passed. Earth would begin preparing for contact with the Valix, and both species would work together to solve their shared environmental crisis. That night, Zara and Alex sat on the same roof where she had first revealed her true identity. The stars looked different now, not like distant, unreachable lights, but like neighborhoods where friends and family lived. "I still can't believe this is real," Alex said, watching the way Zara's skin shifted from blue to purple to soft gold as her emotions changed. "I can't believe I almost let my fear stop me from telling you," Zara replied. "I spent so much time worried about what might go wrong that I almost missed everything that could go right." Alex kissed her forehead, marveling at the way her skin glowed brighter at his touch. "Your nervousness is one of the things I love most about you. It means you care enough to get things right." 2 years later, Zara was no longer the anxious, young researcher who had left her dying world with shaking hands and a flickering glow. She had become the head of interspecies relations, helping humans and Valix work together on everything from environmental restoration to cultural exchange programs. Her anxiety hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something powerful and useful. She still prepared carefully for every meeting and worried about outcomes, but now she understood that these qualities made her better at her job, not worse. And when young Valix or humans came to her for advice about overcoming their fears and insecurities, she would tell them what she had learned. Sometimes the things that make you different are exactly the things the world needs most. Sometimes being nervous means you care enough to change everything,